All right. As you know, we have been talking about how to bust objections over the last few episodes of this podcast. Well, we were looking back on the episodes and I was listening through them, which I do a lot of the times, listen back to hear how I talk, how I present, how I teach, and all of that stuff. And it makes me a better podcaster. And I realized on episode number 1, there were some things that I said we were going to cover that we didn't. So meaning Rachel and I, have put together a 5th bonus episode for you that we're going to play right now. So if you've been loving the series, well, get ready. And here we go.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we have a bonus episode. So I know you have been enjoying the 4-part series I've done with Rachel, all on busting objections. I've had really good feedback on it. Hope you guys have been learning a lot. Well, when I started to go back and listen to episode number 1, I realized we didn't actually finish out one of the things I promised we would finish out on the very first episode, which was how to start overcoming objections before you even get on the sales call. So what I did is I invited Rachel back onto the podcast, and we were doing a bonus 5th episode on the objection busting series. So Rachel, welcome back.
Happy to be back. I think we just went down too many rabbit holes and we forgot.
Well, we just let it take us where it wanted to take us, and then we forgot what we had promised. And so we are back to be integrity on our word.
Yeah.
So today what we're going to talk about is like, how do we start to overcome some objections, or at least plant the seeds of objection busting before people even get onto the sales call with us. And so we were talking beforehand, we mapped some things out. But where do you want to begin with all of this?
Yeah. So I think a lot of times, we've all heard this thing, begin with the end in mind. So if we take that and begin with the end in mind, which is the sales call, right? That is the last step before you start working with someone. And we spent this entire series talking about the different objections that come up on the sales call. We talked about some of them when they're not just surface level logistic problems, but when they're deeper issues. We talked about the limiting beliefs that people hold that prevent them from taking that next step with you. So if we reverse engineer and walk backwards from that, we can be strategic with some of our top of funnel content, or earlier up in the funnel when people are encountering us at the very beginning. We can be more intentional with how we talk about, or with directly addressing those limiting beliefs that we know people are going to end up on a sales call bringing up.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a ton of sense. And it's something that we teach inside the program, and we do talk about, which is understand, like, it's really, I think what it comes down to is understanding what your audience, who the audience is, what their fears are, what their thoughts are going to be. And that's what we talk about with messaging. You have to understand their mistakes. You have to understand their problems. You have to understand the stuff. And if you know this, and you start doing sales calls and you start recognizing like all of these, patterns with the objections, we can definitely start to overcome it in like our sales mechanisms, like webinars, live trainings, content, like you had mentioned. And I want to share a quick story. I know you know this story, but it kind of gives an example of what we're talking about. And so yesterday I had a sales call, and the guy was actually a sales trainer. And so when I made the pitch and made the offer, I already know like what I'm going to say when it comes to like, not right now, not the right time. I already know how to overcome those for like 70% of the people that we talk to. But he did something that was very interesting. I'm assuming he already knew what I was going to say to the timing of like the timing issue. So what he said was, yeah, everything makes sense. And I know I need it. And I know I need to make a decision right now. And that was very interesting, because that's one of the things I tell people is like, well, if we don't get this fixed now, what's going to happen? And he already, I'm assuming, knew what I was going to say and was stopping me from saying it, which was, I know I need to make a decision right now. Nothing changes until I make a decision, right? And I was like, yeah, right. And he goes, but the thing is I do have a vacation coming up. These are real, actual things that I have coming up. And the best programs, the real ones out there, will still be around in 2 months when I get there, when I get back from the vacation. So are you going to be around in 2 months when I get back from the vacation? And it was like, wait, what just happened? Like, what am I supposed to say to that? And like, no, you should get in now because I'm not going to be around in 2 months. I'm not one of the real programs. And so it broke me out of my patterns of what I usually say. And I couldn't come up with something on the spot. Now, what I would have probably said now thinking about it is like, yeah, of course we'll be around. Like we are one of the best ones out there, but because we're also one of the best ones, we can make you a ton of money in the 2 months before your vacation too. Like I could have said something like that, but I was so thrown off. But it was very interesting because he did exactly what we want to show you guys to do, which is to use your communication to overcome things before they even come up. So I didn't even have a chance to use any of my stuff because he just used it already on me beforehand. I just had to admire it. It was just so good. And so that's what we want to teach you guys to do, is start to use this stuff and seed a lot of this stuff before people get onto the sales call. So we had mapped out a couple different things, and I'd say let's just start with culture number one. Like if you start to see that there are a lot of limiting beliefs or objections that come up, you can create a culture within your brand that doesn't let these objections come up. And I'm just going to use a quick example. I have a couple actually that we can go through, but I'll do the first one and then I'll see if you want to add to it, Rachel. But the guy's name is Andy Elliott, and I will say his brand and values definitely don't align with ours, but he is a perfect example of someone who does a really great job of this. So he's a sales trainer. He has like 500,000 people on Instagram, and his culture is very masculine. It's very much like hustle, work until your eyeballs bleed sort of culture. At least that's the vibe I got from the limited amount of content that I watch. But there was something that he does too, is like he has a company value of like, if you're not in shape, you will not work at his company because it means you don't have the discipline. And whether you agree with that or not, I'm just painting a picture of the culture. And the culture very much is like, we're not going to take any excuses. We're not going to let our circumstances control whatever. We are going to do the hard work. We're going to make the hard choices. We're going to take risks. That's the culture. And I'm willing to bet that if you get on a sales call with his program, there's no way that if you spend any time in his brand, you're going to use any objection to try to weasel your way out of this, because they're going to come down on you. And he breeds a culture where those objections are like the enemy. Those objections are the thing that's causing you to be stuck, which it is obviously, but he brings it up front and it's like, that's the enemy. That's the enemy of our brand. That's the enemy of whatever. Is like, if you're going to use excuses of time, you're going to use excuses of money, you're not going to be disciplined, you're not going to take risks, then get the F out of here, because you're not going to be a part of my brand. And although it's extreme, perfect example of creating a culture where you're not letting these objections even come in. And I'm willing to bet his sales call close ratio is probably pretty high.
Yeah, I can see that. And we do that too. We just do it in a different way because one of our company values, for example, and this is internal inside our own company, right? This is not to do with sales calls, but in our own company, one of the values we hold is we have integrity. So we do what we say we're going to do. And if we don't, or if we can't, we see that we're not going to be able to, fulfill on our word, then we own that. We say, hey, listen, I can't do the thing I told you I was going to do. Here's why, and here's when I'm going to do it instead, right? We really, that's something we're really big on inside of our company. And how that shows in our content and on our sales call and with our students is we expect that from our students too. So we hold our students to their own words. We hold them to be in integrity with their own words. And we do that on the sales call as well. So that's an example of how we do what you just mentioned with this guy, Andy Elliott.
Yeah. And we also, like you said, going with the students, I think it's a great thing, even when people become clients, is you can create a culture within with your students to be able to help them do the things that they need to do as well. So for example, we just created a manifesto for NGM Plus. It's like, here's the 7 laws that you need to follow in order to be successful in this program. And one of them is like action and sitting in silence and things like that. Like you have to combine action and silence. And so people now tell us, okay, I'm going to go sit in silence. It's a number thing. I'm going to sit in silence. I'm going to sit in silence. But then when it comes to like, are you taking action? And like we just talked about a student this morning, right? Like you're not taking the action. All I have to do is just like, that's a part of the culture here, is to take action. And if you're not going to take the action, then stop wasting our time because you're not following the culture here. And then over time, what starts happening is you start to use these values and things inside of your culture of your students.
Right.
The objections or the excuses stop coming up. They might still be using it, but they're not asking, what do I need to do? Like they know, so the same thing can happen on the upfront as well. So like for me on our upfront content and the culture we like to create here is I like to combine compassion, but also like a little bit of a hard ass. Like I don't, like make a decision. I don't, and we do that on the sales call. Like I don't care either way, like join or don't join, but you need to make a decision on what you want to do. And if you want to sit there and go back to the way you're doing things, then that's totally fine. And just stop wasting my time with it. And so we do incorporate certain things like that inside of the culture. But someone else that I thought had a really good upfront sort of culture sort of thing was actually Jim Fortin. And his whole business model is built off of be, do, have. And so when you talk about be, do, have, of like, you need to be the $1 million business owner so that you do the things the $1 million business owner has or does. And then you can have the things that the $1 million business owner has.
Right.
Then the sales conversation is very great because they already know be, do, have. And you can ask them like, who are you being right now?
Yeah.
You want to make the decision to get. And so like that is what his whole philosophy is built off of. So it's already conditioning people to overcome objections. I don't know. I'm sure he does know that, but I was thinking like, wow, what a beautiful like philosophy to have.
It's so perfectly aligned. Yes.
Yeah.
This is also part of like the stuff that goes into connection content.
Yeah. We'll get there. There's one more thing I want to say on the culture side before we move to the content thing. One of the other ways that I'm going to start doing this inside of our brand as well, is because most of you guys know the story. We had a terrible launch almost a year ago, and it led us on this path of where we are today. And I'm so grateful for that experience and everything we've learned. But I've invested like well over probably $60,000, probably even more now, $60,000 on coaches, mentors, people coming in and training and stuff to take us out of the spot. And it was hard because it was a spot where revenue was way down. And then I was putting way more money out than I ever have. Right. But then it led us to having best performing launches and now a funnel that's doing like close to $100,000 a month and like all of this stuff. And so what I want to start doing is creating a culture of like investing and getting out of fear is the way to move forward is the thing. And then so what happens is if someone's part of our culture, they understand investing and the fears and stuff is a part of what needs to happen during success. And so if we can do that here on the podcast and within our brand and stuff like that, it'll start to create a culture where people that spend any amount of time, like it won't work with cold, obviously, because they don't know us, but any amount of people who spend time inside of our brand get on the call and they want to use those against us. And it's like, look, this is what we stand for. This is how we made success. You're not going to find anyone else who's been successful without doing this. It starts to be like, okay, yep, I got it. So to wrap that one up, culture is one way, or values within the culture is one way to start to help overcome that. And one of the ways to do that is by displaying your values of your company through your connection content. So I'll let you roll off of that.
So I think, it's also spurring up another thought in me of, when you talk about the values, another one of our values, which is both in terms of, I think this is potential for content, and also it's got potential for company culture, which is we don't shy from mistakes inside of our company. We say, fail fast, fail forward. It's okay to make mistakes. In fact, mistakes are most often the result that we need. So, when I think about this myself inside of the company, when I make mistakes, I think, okay, that was the result I wanted. I wanted that mistake result so that I could learn from it. And now I know better and I can either, take a different action next time or avoid that mistake or whatever it is that the decision I make going forward. So even as, this is that situation that you're on when you're on a sales call and someone is afraid of investing $1,000, $10,000 because they're afraid that that's a mistake. Whereas for us, the way I look at it, and this is how I've looked at investments in my own business, of I need this. I need the result that this action is going to give me. Even if that result is not, the best case scenario. I needed that
Right.
result.
That's so good. So like I'll role play this a little bit with you. So like making mistakes is a huge part. It is one of our company values, and it's something I talk about all the time and talk about on the podcast all the time. So what you're saying is like, if someone's like, I'm not really sure if this is the right move, you're saying like, look, it's not about making the right move or not right move. It's about making a move. And it sounds like you're wanting to avoid a mistake. If you spend any time inside of our brand, you know the value of making a mistake. There is no mistake. You gain something from it. And you almost position it as like, even if this quote unquote is a mistake, you're already taking the first step of success, which is testing and trying and tweaking. What you'll quickly find out is, even though you feel like it might be a mistake, it won't be, because that is a skill and a value you're going to need to find success inside of this program and any program you go into. So you're turning the fear into something that is positive, which I really like. That's cool.
So, James Wedmore used to say, and he still says, you either get the result you want.
Wait, you mean Wedmore, right?
Wedmore.
Yeah,
James
get it right, Rachel.
That's right. Sorry, that was a mistake. See? He says, you either get the result you want or you get the lesson you needed. And every time he used to say that, it would bring up resistance in me, because I was like, no, I don't want the lesson I need. I just want the result I want. So I had to reframe that for myself and say, no, the result I want is the lesson I need. That's the result I want. I want the lesson. Yeah. It's either a lesson how to get to, 7-8 figures, or it's a lesson in how to tweak in order to get to that goal.
We're getting off on a tangent now, but it's
usual.
I know. It's so true though, because it's, I'll just say this, if you're going to be a business owner, you're going to experience a lot more lessons than you are successes, but they're all required. And until you actually learn to embrace and embody and just love and express gratitude for those like lessons, it's just gonna be a very difficult path. It just really is. You're gonna be upset and in misery more than you're gonna be in happiness and success. Like it's just the way it works. Okay, so we talked about connection content.
So connection content. Yes.
Yeah. So connection content. And the reason why we want connection content is it displays the values of you as a personal brand, as the company. But if you are intentional with those values to help you overcome objections, like us, we talk about, the value of mistakes, investing in yourself, stuff like that, like taking risks. I talk about that all the time, taking risks. I'll talk about how I walked off the ledge, and I'll tell that to people like, I understand there's fear. Like every decision is based off fear, but you have to take, as you know, from our brand, you have to walk off the cliff sometimes. And so these are already set. And a lot of times we're like, yeah, okay, I know. And so you can start to use connection content, but we can also start to use thought reversal content to help overcome objections as well, right? Right.
Because if we kind of take a zoom out for a minute, what are thought reversals really? They are limiting beliefs or perspectives that we're trying to shift people out of, because those perspectives, those limiting beliefs, cause them suffering, right? So that's the whole reason behind a thought reversal, is to help someone shift out of a belief that causes suffering. Now, if I look at the sales calls and the limiting beliefs that prevent people from moving forward on your sales calls, those limiting beliefs also hold people back. They also cause them suffering, right? They are not good decisions when we base them off of these limiting beliefs. So when you think about the thought reversals you might create inside your own brand and in your own niche, you could address some of these limiting beliefs that are going to come up on a sales call.
So let's do an example. Do you have an example that pops into your mind of like a thought reversal that could help overcome an objection?
I don't have a title in my mind because I haven't thought that one through yet, but you could create.
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
So if we did something like, and it could be pretty subtle too. They don't have to be direct. You know, it could be something like, so if we did something subtle where we look at the concept of what's going on. So if the concept of not investing is because of money, we could, and we look at like what's going on here. It's like a fear of losing money or spending money. You could do something like making business decisions out of fear of losing is one of the worst ways to grow your company. And then what you could do is give examples of that. So you'd be like, look, a lot of people think that when they don't do something because they're afraid of losing, that they're actually making progress. This could show up in the way of not investing in things you want to invest in. This could be not hiring the team member. This could be not whatever. And then for me, I could use the story of like hiring Taylor when I couldn't afford her and all of these things. So it's not so directly in like, you have to invest in a program, but it's like, let me show you examples of how fear can show up and how that doesn't lead to those decisions. And that could be a concept you keep within your brand, even the next week doing a how-to video on how to make a decision inside of your business when fear is present. You know, we can start to do those sorts of things. And this can be for any business, like whether you're an accountant, you teach accountants, or you are a doctor or a yoga instructor or whatever it may be, there's always going to be some sort of fear. So you have to pull up the specifics of how that fear shows up for your audience. But if you start to introduce this idea of not letting fear control decisions that you know you need to make, then that kind of, again, starts to create a culture within your brand where that is already preceded before they even get onto the call. Does that make sense? I explained that okay?
Yeah, I think you explained it great. It also made me think of, it's not so much a thought reversal, it's more of a connection, but it made me think of a connection piece that it's kind of somewhere in between those two, where, you know, part of what you want people to believe in and adopt as their new paradigm is it's time to change. Like, now is the time to change. And it's okay that change is scary, and I'm still going to do it, right? So for me, what came up for me in my mind as I was thinking, for example, about the parenting niche, which is, you know, my work, when you're about to become a parent, every parent knows this, right? When you're about to become a parent, are you actually ready? Like, if you knew before you became a dad, if you knew what you know now about parenting, were you actually ready? Like 100% guarantee you were not, right? You were not ready.
No.
You were not ready. But you did it.
Ironically, the only people that are ready to be parents are parents. And not even then, probably.
Yes, it's crazy, but it's like the most important job where you learn on the job.
Yeah, I remember when we left the hospital, I was like, well, there's no instruction manual, there's no like pamphlet, they just like give you a human and you're like,
figure it out.
All right, see you later. And you're like, what?
Feed them when they cry.
Yeah. Diaper food burping. That's it. Okay, now we're off on another tangent. So
okay, sorry.
Pull back in. I forgot where we're going.
Get back on track. Also, you know, the other example is, so I don't know, this was a while ago, but I remember when I got my driver's license. So I passed the test and I got into the car for the first time. And now logically I know, okay, I am like prepared, right? But in reality, shoot, it's a lot to keep track of. Like, I have to look in the rear view mirror. I have to look at the side view mirror. I have to like keep track of where I am and think about where I need to go. And I'm going to turn. Like, there's a lot. I learned on a manual stick shift. So I had to like shift gears. And I was like, okay, this is a lot. This is a lot. And I can't, I can't do all of the things at the same time. Fast forward to where I am now. I don't know how many decades have passed since then, but like now I drive with one hand on the wheel, sipping my latte and listening to New Generation Entrepreneur podcast, right? So like, you know, it is, you're never ready is the point. Like, even when you have to do the thing, you're never ready. And what makes you ready is doing it and practicing and over and over and over. How many times have I driven in the car to reach a point where I can do it kind of like not on autopilot exactly, but sort of.
Right. Yeah. And so again, this is all stems back again to instilling sort of those values or lessons that they need to sort of accept in order to say yes onto the sales call, just incorporating those into the brain.
And incorporating language patterns that are persuasive and designed to shift perspective.
Okay, so give me an example of that.
So like just now, like this metaphor that I just gave about driving, right? It's a metaphor.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it's designed, which is a sleight of mouth pattern. Exactly, which is one of like many patterns we teach. Because it's designed to help you shift perspective on something else, right? I gave you this example of driving, which most of us have had in our lives. We can all relate to, and we understand, oh, if investing in a course, or if changing, or if like being ready is like being ready to drive a car, oh, I understand. I just have to do it and I have to practice it.
Right. Exactly. And I use them all the time. I have my go-to metaphors and stuff that we use all the time. We see them, and obviously I see them in our content and our podcast, but then we again can use them on the sales call. So just to kind of recap, we have culture, using content like thought reversals and connection to instill values into the brand, which is going to help with culture, but also can kind of seed the objection busting beforehand before they get on the call. Now, the next thing that we had written down was also more related to like your sales mechanism. So your webinar, well, everything we talked about so far is like your upfront content. So your content and the brand and the culture and the content, the upfront content can start to seed a lot of it. But also the sales mechanism is a great thing to start using as well. So your webinar, your challenge, your live training, whatever it may be, is a great way to do it. So we talked about a couple different things. Knowing that the biggest objections are usually going to be time and money. So one of the things that I like to do on sales mechanisms, like when we do our big launch and stuff, is give some positive attention or affirmation to the fact that they even showed up and how important time is. So it's kind of like, okay, look, you guys decided to be here. One of the biggest reasons that most people's messaging isn't going to work is because they come up with the excuse of time. It's not the right time. I'm in this program. I'm over here, but not you guys. You guys have already made a decision. I want this fixed now. So I want to commend you guys for being here now, not using the excuse of time to stop you from getting the information that you need. So can we just give a round of applause for all you guys being here? I just gratitude from the bottom of my heart. But then we can see that throughout the presentation as well. So then when you get onto the sales call, it was like, look, Brandon said on the webinar, he said on the training, like, you made that time to change now. So what changed between you showing up to the training and now to get the help that you need? Like, because you already committed the time, you already committed that now is what happened.
Right. So like, you're reinforcing the identity that you want them to embody in order to move forward, right? It's the identity they need to have, the identity of, I'm someone who makes time for what's important, right? I'm prioritizing my business because I showed up on this webinar, or I'm someone who takes action, right? Like I don't let the excuses stop me. So you're reinforcing that identity that they need to have in order to then take the next step. Yeah.
And you could do the same thing with money as well. So it'd be something like when I do my training and stuff, because ours product is a money related product, I get it say things like, look, how many of you guys have been doing what I just taught you? How many of you guys think that this is really powerful? How much more money do you think you guys can make by using this right now? How much money do you think you've been losing by not using this right now? And again, you can use this for any company or any product. It's kind of like what we talked about in money. You just have to figure out where the value is. So even with yoga, like it's just use yoga for an example. It's like, how many of you guys feel like this would improve your health? How much money are you spending right now on stuff that could be gone because you're using yoga? Like you can start to use those sorts of the questions on your training to, again, seed this idea of getting them past that money hump, to see the value of it, to not use the excuse of money. You can even take it as far as like, how many of you guys think you can make more than $10,000? Because that's what our program is. More than $10,000 by just using this alone. Okay, Bobby, and just write them all down. Bobby, Julie. So you can start to use that sort of language inside the webinar or training.
You know what else I love about this is because when you future pace in that way, you're also kind of seeding the idea that they have what it takes within them to be that future pace hero that, you know, that your program takes them to, right? So, I like how this all ties in with all the different elements we teach, different messaging elements. And, you know, we talked about this many times on the podcast, that the struggling avatar and future pace hero are part of those, part of that library of elements.
Yeah. 100%. And so, where do we want to go next with this? So let me go with one more example here. Is you can tell personal story on side of the webinars as well. So like people, I think, blindly use story inside of webinars. They're like, I just need to talk about myself and build that connection. It's like, no, use the story to provide a lesson that you want them to take on, And so you can talk about times when, like, especially during the pitch or even earlier on, and you can talk about your money stories or something. I'll just use me as an example. I can use the time about when I hired Taylor to come on, or I can use times of when I've invested in certain things. Even during the pitch, like I kind of like using this one and I don't like using it for a couple of reasons, and I'll explain why. You could even say things like, look, some of you guys are going to leave today and some of you guys are going to invest the money and some of you guys are going to be on the fence. For the people that are on the fence because it's purely just a money thing, here's a quick story of when I made a decision on how to do that. And the only thing that is guaranteed is that if you don't make the decision to invest, you're going to go back to the way that things are for you. So you can start to use story to incorporate these lessons as well. But yeah, I think that's all I have on the sales mechanism piece. Do you have anything else you want to add to it that we can address?
Not necessarily well, I mean, yes, I do. First of all, the story is super powerful. And again, something that we touch upon inside of our own program as well. But, what came up for me while you were talking about this is, when people get on a sales call, so again, back to the idea of start with the end in mind. When people come on a sales call and they say, these are my problems, okay? When you ask them in the discovery, why are you here, right? What are you struggling with? Here are my problems. And then those are the problems you take to the top of your content to talk about what you do. So this starts to be, and we talked about this inside the series in the previous episodes. Part of what you need part of the trust you need to build is trust in your process and trust in you, that you understand these problems and you know how to solve them. So it's like this, it's this loop, right? Because you're taking it from the actual people who are showing up on sales calls, the people who have already bought into your program. And when you take those specific problems and then bring them up to the top of your content, you're creating trust in your authority, trust in you as a person. Hopefully you're creating rapport as well. So again, back to the idea that it's this feedback loop, right? That all these pieces are connected together through messaging.
Right. Yeah. And if you're in the sort of business we are, you could do an objection busting series like this as well, so that everyone knows how you're going to bust their objections and they can see their bullshit
That's
live
right.
on action. So if you're going to come to one of our sales calls, don't come with any objections. Okay. So there's another way you could do it. But I think that's it. Just to kind of recap, I think it's creating a culture where it's, unlikely for these, objections or excuses to come up. It's using your upfront content to build connection, to display those values, but also using thought reversals to overcome the concepts of what's going on inside of the objection, and then using it inside of your sales mechanism. So when, like reaffirming the fact that they showed up, they've already invested the time, they've already committed, and it's almost like putting words in the mouth a little bit, but it's also true. It's like, you've already made the decision to fix this now, which is why you're here. So and you can even do that to pitch. Like, look, you guys already made the decision to fix this now. That's why you were here. That's why you showed up. So it makes no sense to go back to not fixing it now. So let's go and fix it now. And here's like, book a call or get on, a program, or get in the program, or here's the link or whatever. You can start to use the money objections inside of there as well. So like, how much money are you guys spending on this right now? How much money do you think this is going to make you or save you? Or, if you were able to do this, how much more money will you save? Like, those value things can happen inside the webinars and live presentations, but those are all excellent ways to start seeding objection busting stuff before they even get on the sales call.
We talk a lot about you have to create demand with your content. This is an aspect of that. It's seeding the objection busting content and creating demand to work with you. Part of what that means is you've already broken through some objections, because for someone to actually get on a sales call and spend 30, 45, 60 minutes with you, you've already had to overcome some objections for someone to do that with you, right? People are not just sitting around wanting to get on a sales call. So, the demand creation is in part about busting through objections from the get-go. And sometimes, just like with any other thing, people need to hear it multiple times before they can actually kind of have it sink in. So they have to hear you busting objections at the top of your funnel and then inside your sales mechanism and then on the sales call. Like it has to be, you have to hear it multiple times, multiple angles before you can really kind of accept it, I guess, or move through it.
Right. Well, something just kind of hit me as you were talking, because I want you to imagine what happens when you combine this with all the demand creation stuff, which we teach subconscious demand. We teach you how to turn your knowledge and your skills into language that is at the awareness level of your audience, but it creates this subconscious automated, like, oh my God, I need to work with you. So we're talking to the subconscious, but at the same time, the subconscious isn't going to want to go through any pain in order to get this. Kind of like what you talked about earlier. You said, I just want the end result. I don't want the lessons. So the subconscious, that's exactly what the subconscious wants. So we can create all the demand in the world, but then when it comes time to finally like take the plunge to get those things or to do what we need to do, the subconscious like starts to freak out. Again, it's all automated stuff. So when you start to combine automated demand with automated objection busting, it starts to make the sales flow a lot easier. And especially when you do that in your upfront content, because again, we're not battling the subconscious, which we know 95% of our decisions are subconsciously made. So when you combine I'm going to remove your safety mechanism or get you to see it differently, so the safety mechanism isn't firing, combined with automated demand creation, it's like game over. Your sales are going to start to increase.
Right.
Makes sense?
Right. Yeah, totally. And really everything we've been showing you this entire series is designed to help you take your prospect out of that fight or flight. Because that's how they show up on the call already. They're already stressed out. They're already anxious. they have some resistance.
They have a problem.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. And they also have the fear bubbling up of, oh my God, I'm going to have to make a decision at the end of this call. I'm going to have to take action. And that's an uncomfortable place for any of us. So, everything we've been talking about this in all these episodes put together is designed to help you bring people out of that fight or flight so that they can actually make decisions using their logic. Because once the fight or flight kicks in, forget it. It's over. It's over. And you can't, there is no logic in the world that will overcome that.
Exactly. So I'm going to do a shameless plug. I've never done this on a podcast before, but
Cool.
I'm just going to say this. Look, we talked about objection busting, which comes down to messaging. We talked about today about why creating automated demand inside of your messaging, this feeling of like when they hear you talk, they're like, oh my God, this is what I need. This person understands, they have trust in your ability to solve the problem. And then you combine that with objection busting as well. You're creating an easy pathway for the subconscious to say yes. And this is exactly what we teach inside of NGM Plus. I'm in there every 2 weeks. So if you're like, this series has been really, really powerful. Brandon and Rachel know what they're talking about. I want them to be able to work with me on my specific business, on the specific objections I'm getting. This is your opportunity to do it. So Rachel, as you guys know, is our head coach inside the program. Is my program, obviously. And every 2 weeks I'm doing calls. Rachel's doing calls. We're in the Facebook group. Like we were here designed on taking our concepts of what we taught you in the series and actually integrating it into your business to help you with your specific scenario. Here's what I want you to do. You already know the price. I already mentioned it. I could go through all my objection busting stuff, but you already know that I'm going to bust your objections and what I'm going to say. So if you're like, okay, now is the time. I'm tired of the current situation. All I want you to do is to send me a message. I am Brandon Lucero on Instagram. So go to I am Brandon Lucero on Instagram. Just send me a DM and be like, all right, heard the objection busting series. I want to see if I'm a right fit for the program. And by the way, we won't let you in if you're not a right fit. Okay. So you have to qualify to be inside of this program. So and again, you could be at 0 in sales. You could be we've had people that are at like 500,000. So there's a specific criteria of what we're looking for. And it really doesn't have to do with how much money you make. It actually has to be more of like who you are as a person. And so if you want to see if you qualify, just send us a DM. Ben will either get on a call with you or send you a booking call. And then you'll be on a call with either Rachel, me, or Katie, one of the other coaches. So that's my shameless plug. After the series, wasn't planning on doing it, but it felt right. So Rachel, any last words before we wrap up?
I feel honored if in some way I inspired you to put a shameless plug on the podcast. I feel like I did what I came to do.
Well, maybe we should do more of it. I don't know, but anyways, yeah, go do that. Honestly, it's the only way you can work with us right now. Like we will launch our entry level program in sometime in March, or sorry, sometime in 2024, probably March. So this is the only way to work with us for the next 10 months or whatever it turns out to be. So go do that. And then thank you guys for listening. Again, I would love to hear any responses, even if you just send us a DM and we're like, hey, this has helped me in so many different ways. I'm not ready for the program yet. That's fine if you want to use that excuse, but I would also still love to hear your feedback on it. And we always appreciate any reviews you want to leave us on iTunes. So Rachel, any last words for the audience before we wrap up this series?
No, just to say thank you, Brandon, for having me. I love talking messaging. I love talking sales, and I'm so grateful you gave me an opportunity to talk about it with you. So thank you. And thank you to the listeners for being with us.
Yeah. Well, thank you for seeding the idea. It was your idea to do this, and it turned out to be an awesome series, and I loved it. So thank you. And for everyone listening, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you all next week. Take care.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.